This is my presentation on free will and why I believe that it is a real thing. So I'm going to start by defining some terms, and I feel like this will make the most sense if I actually define the belief which opposes the view that people have free will, which is called determinism. And determinism is the view that every event, including human actions, is brought about by previous events in accordance with universal causal laws that govern the world. And so basically, believers of determinism believe that man does not have the freedom of choice. They believe that our decisions and our actions are caused by things such as human nature, the environment, psychological forces, and social dynamics. And essentially that all of our decisions and actions are caused by things that are out of our control. And so a view that opposes determinism is libertarianism, which is the view that humans are able to make authentically free choices that are not determined by previous events in accordance with universal causal laws, that there is a meaningful sense that though we made one choice, we could have done otherwise. And that's my belief. I believe that people can make genuinely free choices, and as a result, we should be responsible for those choices that we do make. And I won't deny that there are factors that are going to influence the choices that we make in our lives, but I think ultimately we do have the power to choose one way or the other, and that the choices that we make aren't determined by things that are beyond our control. So, like I already mentioned, I do believe that we have free will, and I do not think that free will is just an illusion. And so, I'm going to talk about the arguments made by a couple of philosophers who also believe in free will. A couple of arguments that I agree with. So, William James, who was an American philosopher, he proposed that there are two ways of viewing the universe. One being that we live in a universe of actualities in which no other possibilities exist other than those that occur, and the other being that we live in a universe of possibilities in which no matter what events have occurred in the past, there are still multiple possibilities in the future. So, how do we choose which universe is real? There aren't any facts to prove or disprove one or the other. And so William James proposed that we choose the theory based on our lived experience. Basically, which universe makes the most sense to us, which universe seems the most rational. And for me, it's the universe of possibilities. Um, I imagine that, if I'm at a fork in the road and I choose one road, the determinist view would say that everything that happened to me previously led me to choose that road. And basically, if I were put in that situation again, like over and over, without prior knowledge of it already having happened, that I would choose that same road every time. And that doesn't seem rational to me. If I'm standing there looking at both paths, I genuinely feel like I can pick either one. Sometimes there just doesn't seem like there's any factors leading me to choose one or the other, especially like given in this picture where both roads are identical. I don't really favor the right or the left. I use this example in one of my previous writing assignments, but I might do something like flip a coin, in which case it's 50-50 as far as which one I would take. That might be the deciding factor. And so if I were to be put in that situation again and again, without prior knowledge of already having been in that situation, who's to say that I'm going to flip the coin the same way each time? That seems weird to think about. Um, Another kind of silly example I used was if I were to close my eyes and spin around a whole bunch in a circle, uh, and then point in a direction, and then that's the path that I took. Who's to say that I would have done that the same way every single time and always taking the same path? That doesn't make sense to me. Another believer of free will is French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, and he was the founder of existentialism. which he defined as existence precedes essence, meaning that humans create themselves through free choices and are responsible for who they are. So some people may reject this idea because they believe that we exist in the mind of God and that our soul or our spirit is a reality prior to our physical existence. But Sartre, who is an atheist, would obviously disagree with this. And he explains the belief of atheistic existentialism pretty well in one of his writings. And I'm going to read a few sentences from it. He says, "If God does not exist, there is at least one being in whom existence precedes essence, a being who exists before he can be defined by any concept, and that this being is man, or as Heidegger says, human reality. What is meant here by saying that existence precedes essence? It means that, first of all, man exists, turns up, appears on the scene, and only afterward defines himself." And as somebody who also is a non-believer of God, this makes a lot of sense to me. It definitely sounds more rational than the alternative. And so this is another reason why I believe in free will and why I believe that man does make himself. So aside from thinking that free will is real myself, I think that just the belief in free will in general is important. I feel like if the common belief was that we didn't have freedom of choice and that we didn't have free will, that it would have a mostly negative impact on the world. I feel like the determinist view, it just promotes hopelessness and pessimism. And for some people, I feel like, if they felt like they didn't have the freedom of choice, that they weren't actually in control of their decisions and their actions, that it would just, cause them to put less effort into improving themselves and acting morally and, trying to create a better world. Now, the determinist would say, it doesn't matter if people don't believe in free will and they make no effort to improve themselves and act morally and create a better world because they're already determined to act that way and there's nothing that they can do about it. But the problem is, what if they're wrong? What if free will is real? Then the determinist view it has a negative impact on the world when it doesn't have to. If your belief is wrong, you're just creating a loss of human potential. And if your belief is right, then everything's the way that it's going to be. And, nothing's been gained, nothing's been lost. So I just wanted to end the presentation with something that I thought was funny, unrelated to my opinion on free will and determinism. Something that occurred to me as I was studying the chapter is, we have two opposing views here. One is true and one is not. One is the way that the world actually is and the other isn't. And so if we live in a world where there is free will, some people freely chose to believe in determinism. And on the other end, if we live in a deterministic world, some people were compelled to believe in free will. And I just thought that was kind of funny.